Assume Stephanie's ready back here. We will continue on with the 2024 budget hearing. It is July 10th, and we're ready for Human Resources. So,
Good morning, or afternoon now, Commissioners. Angela Lewis with Human Resources to present our 2024 budget. The mission of Shawnee County Human Resources is to support all county offices and departments by making our organization an employer of choice in the community. Our aim is to support Shawnee County government by providing efficient, effective, and professional human resource services. We will accomplish this by attracting, developing, and retaining top talent, recognizing high-quality work, providing and administering competitive benefits and compensation, strengthening employee relations, facilitating training and education, promoting safety and wellness, establishing sound policies and procedures that ensure workplace equality, diversity, and inclusion. Our team consists of myself, Michael Augustine, the Deputy Director who's here with us today, Becky Roth, our HR Specialist 2, Barbara Lewis, our Benefits Assistant, Chevis Drake, who's new to our team as the HR Specialist 1, and Joshua Atkinson, the Accountant 1 for payroll. Our 2024 budget request is $684,520. 92% of that is personnel services at $633,724. 6% is contractual services at $39,646, and 2% is supplies at $11,150. I'll take some time to go through each one of the categories and highlight our budget request. HR currently has 6 full-time employees and 1 intermittent. The Society for Human Resource Management recommends that HR be staffed with 2.57 people for every 100 employees. For 7 months of this year, we've averaged 1,414 employees. We recognize that the summer hiring will taper off, but over the next several years, we'll be asking for an increase in our staffing in HR. So for our personnel services budget, we are asking for an increase of $70,796 in order to add 1 position that we'd like to have as an HR Specialist 2. The addition of the HR Specialist 2 would allow us to post positions internally and maintain our external websites, attend career fairs and other local recruiting events, and they would aid our department in getting positions posted and filled faster. I do have a copy of the proposed PD in front of you for your review. Our next category is contractual services. We're asking for an increase of $1,050 for third-party HR, legal, and tax services, and we're asking for $17,000 for countywide cost of advertising open positions. Currently, we work with the departments and do directed advertising, but it would be nice to be able to blanket the county for all of our open positions. Next, we have our budget for supplies. We are asking for $2,500 to fund a new countywide retirement and milestone celebration program. We're asking for a $50 increase for upcoming notary renewals for HR staff. We're asking for 2 subscriptions to Adobe PDF management software. One of them would be for the new employee. We're asking for $2,000 in new computer equipment for the new employee as well. And we're asking for an increase of $1,100 for the increased cost of color copying. The overall increase for 2023 is $143,105. Typically during our budgeting process, I'm asked what's next for HR. We are looking to do a wage study in 2025. It wouldn't affect this year's budget or the 2024 budget. However, it is something that I want to be at the top of your minds. The economy has changed so much post-COVID that I believe we should go away from our normal 5 to 7 year wage study to this 4-year wage study to try to stay competitive. We're looking again to develop the countywide retiree significant anniversary recognition program. We'd like to develop a countywide mission, vision, diversity, equity, and inclusion belonging statement. We need to finish updating our human resource policy manual. We would like to implement family-friendly workplace in conjunction with the Kansas Children's Service League, and we'd like to continue to explore new recruitment strategies targeted towards our difficult-to-fill positions at the Health Department, the Department of Corrections, the Sheriff's Office Communication Center, and the Parks and Recreational seasonal positions. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Could you explain the advertising thing again? Before you were using other departments' funding for this?
Yes, we're
Would this
partner-
be replacing their funding for that? Or?
Not necessarily replacing it, because some of the departments do need to do some targeted advertising. But it would allow us to advertise on behalf of the whole county. So when we do job or career expos and different things, we don't have to go to each department and try to budget it out separately. We have a budget to work from.
Angela, what's the exact cost for the HR specialist two?
$70,796. This would be an HR specialist 2 position.
And that's the same as the position you just hired for?
No, we hired an HR specialist 1 who
Okay.
is basically our front desk and does a lot of things in our office, but this would be equivalent to Becky Ross' position, who is our HR specialist 2, only this position would focus on recruiting type task.
Okay. And how long was that position open for?
It's not opened, it would be a new position.
The one
we're-
that you just filled?
Oh, gosh. So, overall, we've been short-staffed in human resources for the better part of 2 years. Chevis came into that position earlier, actually on the 3rd of July, so we just got it filled. Barbara Lewis was in the position before that and then promoted to our benefits. So it's not just one position that's been empty, we've had 2
Okay.
that have kind of gone back and forth.
The main areas that we are really needing employees is the health department, public works, solid waste, and then also with Parks and Recs or
And Sheriff's Office Communication Center. And
communications.
as you all know, we're doing much better at the DOC, but we can't take our foot off the gas there. We need to continue hiring over there.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
this is a minor thing, but the new computer for the new employee, I think that generally is covered by IT
Okay.
in their PC refresh. So generally, I don't think you would need to fund that. I think
With that
generally
being the
it's-
case, I'd be happy to take off that 2,200, I
that's a-
think it is.
That's a minor thing, but
Yeah. Don't want to
at
spend
least
or,
it would be a question for Mark.
okay. I will get with Mark and I will be happy to reduce my budget by that amount.
So the investment of the $70,000 with the salary and benefits, what is it that I mean, their sole job is just gonna be recruiting, retention?
Oh, we have plenty to do in HR that we can put in with that job, but that would be a focus. Part of, I don't want to say the problem, but part of what slows us down is being able to get things posted quickly. The minute someone's in front of you, they would like to have the next step, it be posted on not only our website, but Handshake, Indeed, and everywhere else that we post positions. That takes time and resources and people to be able to do. Mike does that currently, but if we had someone else who could be doing it more immediately, it would be very helpful.
Okay.
So, also a small thing, but your copy machine contract went up by 50%?
We use a lot of color copies, and it's not that the contract by itself went up, it's that our share of the color copies have went up. We do all of our orientation packets in color now, just so they look better, and we give people a good impression when they start with us. So we have increased the number of color copies that we use significantly. Yes.
And we print those all in-house?
We do.
You know? So I know there's a couple printers just right up the street. I wonder if have you priced going out for that stuff?
It's something that we could certainly look into.
I'd be interested in see what the difference is.
Okay.
That was my question.
Okay. Yeah, we've never really considered sending it out. There are changes to the orientation packets from time to time, so we always hesitate to print too many ahead of time when there may be changes to capers or other rules or regulations that's part of that.
this is another very minor thing, but she has, 2 subscriptions here to Adobe management, and that is something that I really encourage departments to do. There is so much efficiencies that
There
we
is.
can have just from a small little Adobe software that, my department in our year-end meeting is really we're encouraging departments to look at that, because so many of them will print something off, write it, and then scan it, where you can just, type it right on there. So, I'm glad to see that. I hope more departments will look at that, because it can be a real efficiency.
Yes.
And I was just gonna say, you asked the question about the consolidated advertisement. Currently, like for that job fair, for every one of the expenses that we had, which there was 4 different vendors, I think, we ended up having 8 purchase orders for each vendor across every department, and every department has to manage all that. And then one person in Angela's department has to pull all those together and reference all those purchase orders as the invoice goes over to the clerk's office, who then has to pull all those purchase orders in individually. It's very inefficient the way that we're currently doing it.
Sounds like it.
Yep.
Are there any other questions that I could answer for you?
I can't think of anything else, so.
All right. Well,
Thank you,
thank you for your time.
Thanks.
All right, we're at, resume our budget hearings for the 2024. It is July 10th, and we're ready for Department of Corrections. So Brian, it's all yours.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon, Brian Cole, Shawnee County Department of Corrections. I first want to say thank you for giving us the opportunity for us to present our budget for 2024. I truly appreciate this time to be able to explain our request and also to put together what I believe is a very fiscally responsible budget. I'd like to introduce Major Eve Kendall, who was very diligent in putting this and submitting all, if not, most of, if not all, the forms and putting together this budget. We have Angela McCarty, who's the Deputy Director, a lot to do with the detention part and some of the capital outlay, and then Major Tim Phelps over with juvenile detention and also has to deal with the community corrections. So, and if there's any specific questions that I can't answer, then I certainly will call upon our team to help me out. I always like to start out, our budget with our vision statement of achieving excellence through integrity, dedication, and teamwork. Just letting you know that we try to rely on those 3 guiding principles to do the best job we can, to have character, to be dedicated to our profession, and work together as a team. And not only just within the confines of our wall, but working together with all of the different departments and doing our best to work together as a team. We saw a lot of good successes in 2022. We've seen a continuation of 2023, and we expect that to go forward in 2024, especially with meeting our budget, our recent success with all of our audits. We've never failed an audit, knock on wood. We're in the top 1 to 3% of juvenile detention, and Shawnee County has really put its mark in the region when it comes to corrections. So we have a lot of good staff that are the reason for that, and I'm just honored to be the director. This year's budget, as we get into it, is approximately a 19% increase. Majority of those increases do come from employee salaries, It comes for insurance, anticipated utilities, increases in fees and services like audit expenses. Those are getting going up all the time, memberships and subscriptions. We also, in our budget this year, and I'll explain a little bit more, we put in for the detention part of it, we put in a request for a reentry officer. This is now with our staffing getting up to where it has been, that we are now trying to go to the next level when it comes to our reentry services and programs. And Director or Deputy Director Angela McCarty is directly over that. But when it comes to corrections, not only do we have to think about the those that are coming into jail, reentry starts when they come in, hoping that they will be better, one of our goals, better when they leave than when they get there to the Department of Corrections. So one of our, we want to put a staff member who is specifically in charge over our reentry, that's going to work with our behavioral health partners inside the jail, our medical partners, our social services, creating a plan for this individual, whether it's on work release or if it's employment, education, housing, transportation, to be able to do that. That's one thing that we have just not been able to do because of staffing and funds, but we're in a position now that we really need to go ahead and take on that so we can really increase and make a little bit more robust programming when it comes to our work release program, our trustee programs, our community crews, and creating a plan. The other part of that had to do with, as far as request, had to do with a $1,750 bonus. Now, when it came to staffing with the differentials at the Department of Corrections, it was put into the budget for this year for our command staff, which basically our lieutenants down through security staff for those differentials. It would go into their salary. For those that are at the captains and major area, they were not given any of those differentials. They were given a bonus. We did the same thing that KDOC did, which was about a $3,500 bonus. For all of the staff except this group that I'm talking about, those things go into effect pay period 1, or the first of the year. Then in pay period 14, those differential rates do go into effect for the captain and the deputy director. So so basically I'm talking about the first 6 months there. So that's what I was coming to and putting in our budget, and I was working very closely with Betty and Jennifer on this when it comes to how do we, and even Angela Lewis, how do we make sure that we do have that with everybody else getting that money, that there isn't a lot of compression. So this was the part of the budget. I'm not asking for it for myself. I've already made that very clear that I do not want this bonus, that I'm fine where I'm at, but I do want to see that we try to do that because everybody else in the jail, as far as their command staff, everybody they're supervising is getting that $6 an hour. They're not. They will get it in July, but it was for that first 6 months. So that would be $1,750 for approximately eight or nine people, and that would be all that would be. Food service is a 4% increase due to the CPI, Consumer Price Index, and population increase, even though the price of meal goes down. For numbers, that our numbers are up, that in our last statistical report, we have seen increases on both the adult and the juvenile detention center. It continues to increase. We were in the low 500s, we're now in the mid to upper 500s with the adult, and the juvenile, we've been as high as 40. Today, we're I think at 25, so that has been a very unpredictable group of offenders that we're trying to track. So that has gone higher. And then healthcare is an approximately 7.8%, which is per contract, that has to consider that goes into the contract, employee salaries, estimated for medication and professional services and things like that. That is what consumes or is part of our request for this year of the 19. It is salaries, it is benefits, it is food contract, it is health department, or the health care for our agency. That as far as, do you want us to go into capital outlay as well here?
Yes.
Okay. As far as capital outlay, I'm very excited to announce we're not asking for any money to come from the CIP budget that gets allotted. We do have approximately 6 things that we have. One of them is the DOC Sally Port that we put on there for it's a approximate $20 million project. I'm not asking for that to even be looked at until 2026. I think this gives us time to look at, unless it can be something that can get talked about sooner. We're in the middle of a behavioral health care deal, and I'd like to be honest with you, I'd like to concentrate on one big program or project instead of two. The adult residential center, this has a lot to do with community corrections and our reentry, which is approximately a $10 million. It's a 60-bed center for the housing of eligible felony probationers. And this would work closely to get those who are in our clients that do come in, that we have basically a lot of transitional housing, and we're able to offer programs and treatment to them that can't get their housing. This is very common in community corrections. We're one of the few major cities, Wichita, Johnson County, Olathe and them, they already have these. So we're probably behind when it comes to a residential care center. But this was something that helps the client get acclimated to the community better. It helps them for reentry and get services in a controlled environment. But again, this is something that I'm not asking for consideration until 2026. The DOC security upgrade, this is something we continue to do. It's $70,000 each year. It will be for the next 5 years. This just has to go with the technology that we see all the time with our annex and or it comes to the Department of Corrections when it comes to our security system. We have a very sophisticated security system, and it always is needing upgraded. Technology, as soon as we put something in, they're coming back and say, we no longer have parts for that. And that seems to be coming across the board. Replacement of the workstations. This is something that I would like to do in 2024, but again, I've worked with Eve Kendall and I've worked with Betty and Jennifer. We have another funding source for that. We have a building fund that the Board of County Commissioners have allowed us to create. We have approximately $762,000 in that account. And so this is something, instead of when we go through the CIP or the capital improvement plan stuff that we're asking, we designate $1 or $2 million. We have another funding source that would not be taken out of it. So that would leave more money for the other departments. Inmate transport vehicles, we did get a permission last year. We still are looking at probably trying to replace 2 more, but I'm not asking that we look at that until 2025 and 26. And then juvenile, to replace the furniture at the Juvenile Detention Center, which is $120,000, and we would use the building fund as well. We would not use the CIP funds that were allotted. We would use this business or this building fund. So we would have another funding source. So essentially in 2024, the DOC would not have any CIP coming out, except for, yes, Jennifer?
The $70,000?
The $70,000, yes, would. I'm sorry. The 70 would. Other than that, the others would come out with another funding source. When it comes to the community corrections, we did not receive any additional funds from the Kansas Department of Corrections. We're now, with our request, we're asking for $253,000 and $604, $253,604. This goes to pay for the staff increases or for the staffing or their salaries, and to request and fill 2 new programs or 2 new supervisor positions at ISP. This is something they had in ISP for many years and they stopped. Our caseload is getting very high to where there is no buffer between the officers and the division managers, and we need to have that buffer back to be able to handle some of those intermediate details and job duties. By statute, and we work closely with Jim Crowell and them, that with this request, if it were approved, later down there, we would be at 42% of matching what KDOC provides us. And so we're continuing to run with one of the highest caseloads in Shawnee or in Kansas. If it's not the highest, it's second or third highest. And we've seen a tremendous amount of benefits from both the programming and the community corrections of reduced officer and inmate injuries. We've looked at better accountability at our processes. We're looking at a reduction in recidivism, which we've seen this year. We are seeing a better behavioral health care process that we've been working on. And I think the other big success is that we're able to hire and retain staff. That's allowing us to do the programs. Because before, when we didn't have work release, we didn't have any staff. So when the staff get vacant in operations, I have to pull the specialty staff out of operation or out of programs to run operations. That is our main hub. But again, our main goals are to continue to recruit and hire. to make sure that we're looking at the physical plant needs, and that's one of the things we do have going now is the mental health facility, and you can see with the capital outlay that we have there, and being proactive in determining the needs of running a model correctional facility. That's it in a nutshell for me. That I know that you all may have questions. As we've seen the hiring, our number of overtime hours is going down. We're seeing that right off the bat. The recruiting efforts that we're doing is working. It has worked. We're heading in the right way. Our programming is heading in the right way of opening up work release. That's going, continuing our drug and alcohol program. But there's still another level when it comes to our program, and that's the reentry part of it. And so we have to stay up and start getting those programs going. But with that, it's about approximately a 19.3% increase, all attributed to increases from employee salaries, insurance, expected utility increases, but we did have the reentry officer and that bonus. So I'd stand for any questions you may have.
Questions? I had one about advertising. I see where you had an increase in advertising.
Yes.
Recruitment. Have you worked with Angela on that? Because she was, in her budget, she was adding extra money.
We work with HR very well when it comes to, we work with Angela and HR when it comes to doing something for the entire county. We work very close for that budget. When it comes to something very specific, we run it by Angela first when we're going to do something. When it's come very specific to just the jail, I've always had the position that maybe that should come from our budget instead of pulling something out of Angela's budget that could go to the whole county. We chip in. What Angela would often do, and certainly Angela speak, is that she would come up with an idea and say, you know, we have an opportunity for 8 agencies, or we have somebody that wants to come in and do advertising. Would everybody like to be involved? Who would like to be involved, who not? Jail would be, we pay our portion of it into that, and then looking at their budget. But a lot of times I work with Angela when it comes to the whole county as a whole. I've seen her budget more go towards the county as a whole. When there's something more specific, I've used our own budget. But I'm more than happy to work with Angela on our budget. We probably work with her maybe the most when it comes to advertising, but I run everything through her when it comes to advertising. Did I say that right, Angela?
Our recertification, I noticed you have some extra money in for that. Is that to cover what cost? Do we have?
Typically, the increased cost when it comes to the, and I'll make sure that's right, but I think it comes into recertification. Are you talking with NCCHC? Okay, sorry. No.
Every 2 years, sir, Eve Kendall, Department of Corrections. Every 2 years, we have to be recertified in CPR, first aid, AED. So every 2 years, you'll see an influx in that part of our budget. It's every person that works within our agency, because we're all around the inmates and everyone else, basically. So in order to maintain our life safety, we certify everyone. So every 2 years, so this year, 2024, every single person, and Red Cross has upped the cost of certifying one person, so.
Okay, all right. Any other questions?
Brian,
Yes, sir.
on your worksheet, you have about 40-plus open vacant positions. I presume that this, since the time's been passed, you've filled some of those
Oh,
positions.
absolutely. Yes.
What is appropriate staffing at the Department of Corrections? It would be filling all of the positions listed on the budget be adequate staffing, or is that still a need for greater staffing numbers?
We have a need for greater staffing levels, and I'm glad you brought that up. We did budget this year for all the budget, but I gave Angela, back in 2000 when Betsy Gillespie or Elizabeth Gillespie came in, one of the things the Department of Corrections never did was a staffing analysis. And Betsy coming in from the Kansas Department of Corrections, so we called in their group to come in and help us based off of post and our relief factors when somebody calls in sick. So we came up with, based off the post and the relief factors, this is how many staff that we have, and this is how many staff that we would need down the road. We're probably we're several positions behind when it comes to, if we were completely full, we're still probably 30 positions behind when it comes to fully staffing what you would need for relief factors. We've never asked to go above and beyond the staffing we have because we've never been able to fill what we had. And I didn't think it was ever responsible to say, Commissioners, can you give me the money for 30 extra positions that we need, but I still can't fill these other 30? I think that we're not close to that yet. Angela, I have her working on our staffing analysis and been answering some questions with her and going through that, but that is a certified deal. But the positions we have right now are the ones that I think that will get us through. And if we get to the point to where we get to the point where we're full and we're consistently holding that, that'll be a conversation that I'll come back and say, I think we're ready for that. We're not ready for that yet, sir.
Okay. I only ask, forgive me, but there's a bit of fatigue when it comes to the Department of Corrections in that your department is the highest expenditure for the Shawnee County budget, and we increase wages, we rebuild the kitchen facility, we get new radios, we replace boilers, we replace roofs, and it's constantly, and now we have got a $10 million bond to increase housing, and then we see on the request a request for a $20 million Sally Port, and it gets fatiguing. And so when I look at the staffing levels, I know that that's one area that you have excelled at in the last year, but it's hard to pat yourself on the back if the reality is, even if you were to fill all of these positions, I'm still understaffed.
Absolutely, absolutely. A lot of the things that have come with the physical plant is a couple ones. Number one, they're all basically because of life safety issues and liberty that we have to have statutorily the space to be able to run that, because it's all due based off of statutory and court findings. One of the things that our population, they added on about 288 beds about every 10 years. They did it in 88 when the jail was open. They added another 288 in 98. We added another 200 in 2008. And our population we can hold up to almost 700, and our population has done pretty well. The things that are falling behind, specifically the Sallyport, it was built in 88 for about 3,000 bookends a year. It was built for 200 inmates. We have close to 9,000 facilities. The kitchen, we went from 1,100 meals a day to 3,000 meals a day, or 1,500, excuse me, we went from about 600 meals a day to about 2,000 meals a day. The booking area and stuff was built for that. That's why it hasn't. But you're absolutely right. It is very fatiguing trying to keep up. But one of the things that I want to share with you is that, and I don't mean this disrespectful to the people who built the jail in the past, the design they built created the staffing problem because it's very segmented. We have 15 housing units and several of them only have 20 beds. And that was kind of the going deal there with objective classification systems and new generation jails. Every jail I've visited now are 1 to 100 or 1 to 70. And so that has caused a tremendous amount of, caused us more staffing because, to go back, to make a long story short, what I'm trying to say is when it comes to building these there, we're going to be building bigger facilities like the mental health facility. This isn't going to be a 20-bed facility. This is going to be where one person is going to be running maybe 40 or 50 people and try to get more inmates being watched with one staff. But Kevin, you're absolutely right. It is very exhausting with the staffing when you're building stuff. The Sallyport and stuff like that, that won't require any more staffing. It's just going to be bigger. But you're absolutely right. It is very exhausting to see how things have expanded. And we're trying to do our very best to try to keep up with projections. We just have a person that's doing statistics with us that's going to be working real close with Tim and I. We're going to try to start looking very closely at population projections for the Department of Corrections and Community Corrections and Juvenile Corrections, looking at program needs. So we're not coming in building these 10 bed facilities or modules, it just was not. It's a very nice facility. It just created a lot more, which if you saw the jail with the same amount of numbers, you probably might see 5 modules instead of 15.
Ryan, I know that you and I have talked about this privately, but in some respects, from a strictly financial perspective, Shawnee County would be money ahead to take our healthy inmates, ship them to Anderson County, which charges half the rate that we pay for an inmate. Our average rate for an healthy inmate's around $100 a day. Anderson County charges roughly $50 a day. We would save money by shipping our inmates out of county. I don't know that that's a service to our citizens or to our inmates and again, that's a newer facility in Anderson County as well. But where do we go with our staffing levels at the jail? I mean, you're continuing to see your numbers increase of incarcerated citizens in Shawnee County.
Yeah, the decision, and that's a very good question, sir. I mean, the decision down the road is if our population comes up, the big question comes to, do we ship people out or do we build more expensive facilities? That seems to be the two biggest questions. Some counties have done the shipping out. The big questions that come to the shipping out is that the transportation and the wherewithal with getting to court, court personnel having to drive to Anderson County. If I said to the city of Topeka, I want you to take all of your people down to Anderson County, then it would be the courts and stuff like that. There is a cost to that. One of the things that I've worked very closely with, and it's funny you say it because we talked about this very same thing about possibly looking into would it save us some money. There's going to have to be, I would like to pull in Betty and Jennifer and everybody to talk about the cost saving because the lights are still on in the facility. The staff is still in the facility. Now I wouldn't have to pay staff to go down and get them. I still worry a little bit about medical. And granted, I would send down the healthy people. Typically, Wyandotte County did this. It was strictly based off of staffing, based off the number of inmates. They had the beds. They weren't overpopulated. They just didn't have the staff. So they sent like 200. They put them in Leavenworth. They put them in Johnson County and stuff like that. It was almost basically their budget didn't reduce. They had to now have a contract to house them. So the budget, so basically it wasn't, now I'm going to ask for a contract with another county. I certainly am not afraid to look at that alternative. I think it would be foolish if we didn't look at that alternative. It would create wear and tear on vehicles and staff. It would, 1 year we did send some people to Wyandotte County to Anderson County that were low level, and then they caused a ruckus. The only thing that I want to weigh on this is that if we send out our low level offenders, those are the ones that are in work release. Those are the ones that are doing the kitchen. Those are the trustees that we allow to go out into the community. And if they're all gone, then we take the risk of putting in domestic violence or battery cases out into the community. And if they walk off a job or something like that, I don't want that to come back on Shawnee County. But to answer your question, sir, I'm not afraid to look at that. I think we should look at that to be able to, you have to look at everything. And I'm not afraid to look at that. And we talked about that very same thing today.
On your community corrections, explain to me again how these 2 additional positions are going to enhance the services for Shawnee
I'm going to have
County.
Tim step up for that one.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Tim Phelps, Department of Corrections. One of the directives that we received when we were asked to assume responsibility for the ISP operation or one of the concerns that was expressed was that there was no succession plan. There was no system put in place so that we could plan for the future if there's a change in personnel. And a big piece of that is there's nobody there that can become a manager. Everybody that's working there is either a line employee or they're a top manager. And that's not a good way to do business anywhere in my view, certainly not in that kind of a dynamic. They used to have mid-managers, and then because they lost funding and decided to rearrange their personnel, they did away with them. And so what I'm trying to do is systematically rebuild that system, and that's what these 2 positions were designed to do, is to give me some mid-manager options, and also they can do a better job of overseeing case management within the facility. So that was the thinking.
Okay, thank you.
Betty?
I have a couple questions. And one, oh, not for you, Tim. I just want to verify. Now, you know, for the 2023 budget, we had some vacant positions that we all agreed would be unfunded. I just want to verify that all of these positions all your vacant positions are in your
Yes.
budget. There
Yes.
are not any unfunded at this point in time.
Correct.
The other item that I wanted to ask about was your overtime. You said your overtime is down. Have you adjusted any of your overtime percentages for your budget?
We did not, and the reason we didn't is that, and that's a good question, and that came up. The reason we didn't is that we're still spending the same amount of overtime. The hours are going down, but with the increase in the salaries, we're
Right.
still spending the same amount.
But yours is on a percentage basis. So if it's a percentage and your salaries are going up, then your percentage goes up.
Correct. We kept the same, we've always had a 10%. We've done 10% every year. For years. We've done 10%, whether it went up, our salaries went up, or it went down. We've always done 10%. One year, we went down in our percentage, and we spent almost $2 million, and we went over the budget in there. So we've always had a 10% deal in there and try to stay within that. Yeah, we'd never have fluctuated. We've always kind of kept the same one.
Do you
That may
know-
not sound,
Do you have any idea what your percentage was for 2022?
I sent him an email about
Oh, okay.
to
Good.
pull that up now.
For the budget?
No, their actual. What would their actual percentage?
Did I send it to you anymore, or did I give it to you hard copy?
you may give it to me.
The spreadsheet.
If you gave it to me.
I can't give you exact numbers, and I know I like exact numbers, so I'm sorry about that. But Brian did bring to me the question about the overtime and whether or not we could lower the amount in the budget for 2024. We've always asked for 10% for the union, and then 8% for the classified. Overall, I keep a spreadsheet every pay period for how much overtime we spend, and every year, we spend more in overtime than what we request.
Well, but generally you have vacant positions that also add to that overtime.
Correct.
Number, that you would
And-
have both of those to
And
use
I
for
can,
overtime.
I can say without hesitation that we spend hundreds of dollars, $100,000 more than what we request for our overtime.
For overtime and vacant positions? Because you should have, you're budgeting your vacant position, which generally kind of offsets your overtime and
Yeah.
overtime. You're budgeting
For
both.
an easy example, say that we request $50,000 for overtime. I can say that we probably spend at least $75,000 in overtime.
But you would have a vacant position
Correct.
plus that 50,000 over.
Right. And part of our problem, I guess it shouldn't be a problem, but we're spending more in personnel costs now, because before, when we had all of our vacancies, we were really fatiguing our staff, and so we would run short. Well, now we're not running short, so we're actually spending more money in personnel costs because we have the staff that are running positions instead of having blank positions that we weren't paying for, if that makes sense, or paying overtime for. I'll get those numbers again, and I can give it to Brian, and he can give it whoever.
But to answer your question, Betty, if I'm understanding correctly, is yes, we budget for the vacant positions, and then we budget the 10%, and that's including the money that's budgeted for that. That is correct.
Yeah.
That is correct.
Okay. That was,
Yep.
well,
Yep.
Brian, under your contractual services, medical services, you have contract plus wage increase. Is that by contract, or
Yes.
is this wage increases that you're wanting to give above the contract?
No, we have not done, this will include the contract, correct?
Well, I think the answer is yes. Now, she took the contract number that was already agreed to for fiscal '24 and put it in the budget.
Yes,
Okay, because it's a $500,000 increase from last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a 10% increase.
Okay. She did actually consider the thing we're negotiating about
Okay.
based upon the contract.
I'm sorry,
language.
I've seen unorganized. There was to answer your question, there was 130,000, I think would have been above what the contract would have been.
Okay.
Yeah. And that is in the contract to negotiate that, but that's what we put in there for that. But yes, that would have been, I think it was 200 and, I can't remember, it was over 200 and something, but it was like 130 was our cost.
Anything else? Well,
Do you want to talk about the adult facility for community corrections, your CIP?
Residential?
Yeah, I don't think we talked about that yet, have we?
No.
Again, Tim Phelps, Department of Corrections, you're asking more specifically about the adult residential center?
Yes.
Of course, the design of that is to, instead of having people get released from jail to go on to felony probation and then immediately get right back into their circumstance in their lives, those jurisdictions that have adult residential centers, they require those persons that are at higher risk to go first into adult residential center, immediately begin various services, treatment, and other programming, and get stabilized before then they're released into the community. It could be a 60 to 90-day period of time where all that stabilizing work takes place, and then when they go into the community, they have jobs, they have housing, they have those things that prevent them from returning to the drug activity and the other criminal activity that they are presently going out, and then they can be watched, but they just disappear.
It just seems to me that while this may be a very advantageous program for Shawnee County, if it's going to cost $20 million to build the facility, and then you got to take into account the amount that it's going to cost to staff it and run it, this is a very,
Yes.
very large
Yeah.
expenditure.
And you're right, Commissioner, whether it's 10 or 20, whatever the figure is. What has been demonstrated in their experience in Johnson and Sedgwick County is that the effect of that is they're putting more people on probation successfully, and they're doing less rebuilding of additional jail space, because the population, the criminal activity population, is continuing to increase. The arrests are increasing, the detentions are increasing, but they're able to redirect some of those funds out of the more expensive jail function and put it in community corrections, because they're doing a better job of controlling them and getting them back into the community safely. That's the concept that Johnson County, they started with a 60-bed, and now they got several hundred, because the jurisdiction has realized that it's much cheaper to run these people in the community side than it is to continue to build big chunks of the jail.
Isn't this similar to what the Juvenile Correctional Advisory Board wants to do in housing juveniles, instead of having a youth facility?
Yes, yeah, they're trying to push it toward they stay within the family unit and in the homes, absolutely. And all of these systems that they come up with, they have quirks, they have bumps in the road, and they have to work them out. But for this particular instance, we have two examples where it's demonstrated that it's bringing down the cost of the 10 years at a time, having to build another $20, $30, $40 million structure to keep adding beds and man those beds, which is, of course, as we all know, the biggest cost of any operation is the personnel. So, yes, you're correct.
any other questions?
Did you want those?
I found my email concerning the overtime request money that we've requested through our budget. In 2022, we requested $1,230,000 $659 for overtime, and we actually spent $1,847,000, $1,847,036 in overtime. In '21, we asked for $1,034,224, and we ended up spending $2,167,000 and some change. This year, we requested an overtime cost $1,264,853, and I'm projecting that we're going to spend $1,683,688. So even though we're requesting 10%, we're using more than that, and so it's just to kind of offset some of our personnel costs, basically. So I don't remember quite what I asked for. Well, I guess I can look in '24, but I'm sure that it'll still.
Well, and to me, to compare apples to apples, you'd really have to look at adding an average number of vacant positions plus the overtime you're adding. I mean, you're asking for, and then compare that.
And that's a good approach, and I think maybe if we want to sit down and talk that and look at '24 and then maybe '25 and look at our average vacancies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
A lot of it goes down to this, areas that we have to man, and when you have 30 vacancies,
Right.
they have to be manned. But yeah, I'm more than happy to do that.
Anything else? All right, well, thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Betty, Jennifer, thanks for all your help.
One more day.
One more
We're
day.
back tomorrow morning.
We are back tomorrow, that's my cue, isn't it? We will be back tomorrow at 9 o'clock for Planning Department, Solid Waste, Keep America Beautiful, CRC, and Aging and Social, Noxious Weed Department, Helping Hands, Humane Society.
Thank you.
Can't wait.